All right, so better way to start your day, right? That's what we're all looking for. We took a deep dive into this article, 13 Morning Habits That Don't Please God.
It's not your typical self-help list.
No, not at all.
It's more like aligning your routine with a deeper purpose.
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking gratitude, generosity, and even how we interact with the world around us.
Yeah, they get to the point, too, right off the bat. The
Yeah.
first habit they tackle is neglecting gratitude.
Uh-huh.
They compare it to, forgetting the yeast in bread dough, right? You'll have bread, but...
It's not going to rise to its potential.
Exactly.
And that's where the faith connection comes in, is saying that starting the day with a thank you to God.
Okay.
Recognizing the good even before your feet hit the floor, that sets the foundation.
So, what if you're not a morning person? I struggle with this. This snooze button is my best friend.
Well, the article even addresses that. It's not about forcing this joy if you're not there. It's about shifting your focus. So
Okay.
even if it's just thank you for a warm bed or thank you for this coffee,
Yeah.
that tiny bit of acknowledging the good can have a big impact.
It's almost like you're training your mind to look for that positive throughout the day.
Absolutely. And speaking of things we could all use less of, the article goes after morning complaints.
Oh, guilty as charged, right. Why is the traffic always so bad? I can never find my keys. It's like my own little radio show of doom and gloom first thing in the morning.
And that's exactly the comparison the article makes. Walking out the door with all those complaints, it's like going into a rainstorm with no umbrella.
Okay, I get that, but so then what? Do we pretend everything's perfect even when it's not?
Not necessarily. It's more about how we frame those complaints.
Okay.
So instead of I can't believe this is happening,
Yeah.
maybe it's God give me strength to deal with this.
Okay.
Or even help me see the lesson in this.
So you're taking the negative impulse and turning it into something.
More constructive.
Yeah.
You're not a victim of your circumstances. You're looking for a way through it.
And you're not just bringing yourself down, right?
Exactly, because the article, it points out, negativity, it can be contagious. So one person's grumbling can totally set the tone for everyone else.
Like a chain reaction.
It is.
How do you even break that cycle? Because I'm all for being positive, but life does throw curveballs.
Oh, absolutely. The article's not saying to deny reality.
Right.
It's more like choosing where we focus our attention.
Okay.
Which leads right into the next point, overlooking the small joys.
This is one of those things that's so simple, but so easy to miss.
Right.
When you're, just going through your day, we forget to appreciate the little details.
And that's where the magic is a lot of times. The article compares them to tiny love notes from God hidden throughout our day, a beautiful sunrise, a child's laughter, a good cup of coffee. It's all chances to see the good.
I like that. It's like a scavenger hunt for joy. What's one small joy that you experienced today that you might have overlooked?
Well, I actually had this moment with my dog this morning. She greeted me with her usual excitement, and it struck me how much love, unconditional love, she brings into my life.
Yeah.
It's so simple, but, it just made me smile.
It's so easy to get caught up in the to-do list. We forget those moments, those simple joys.
Absolutely. Speaking of being present, the next habit the article tackles challenges us to examine how we show up for others. It's about not ignoring the opportunity to help someone in need.
Especially now when it seems like everyone's so busy and just focused on themselves.
Exactly. And the article's not necessarily talking about grand gestures of charity.
All right.
It's more those small everyday acts of kindness.
Yeah.
When we can turn towards someone who's struggling or we can turn away.
It's like that saying, be kind. Everyone you meet is fighting a hard battle.
You never know what someone else is going through. And the article argues that by choosing to ignore someone who needs help, it's like we're putting out a spark of God's love in the world.
Wow, that's powerful. It makes you think about those times when you might just walk by.
They actually use the parable of the Good Samaritan to make this point. Remember, he stopped to help the injured man, even though they were from totally different social groups and there was a lot of prejudice between them.
Right. It's like a reminder that compassion shouldn't have boundaries.
Yeah.
So how do we put this into practice? I mean, I'm not encountering injured travelers every day.
You don't have to. It's about recognizing those smaller opportunities, holding a door, listening to a friend, smiling at a stranger who looks lost.
It's like looking beyond our own bubble and seeing the needs of others.
Exactly. And that's where the connected to faith comes in, right? Aligning our actions with God's love, we're actually strengthening our own, spiritual muscles.
Okay, I'm starting to see the connection here. It's not just about checking things off a list. It's more like a way of being in the world that reflects
your values.
Exactly.
Speaking of values, this next point might hit home for a few of us. Spiritual procrastination.
Oh, this is where I think we all have those things that we know we should be doing better, but we keep putting them off.
And the article doesn't hold back. They compare putting off prayer or spiritual commitments.
Yeah.
It's like planting seeds in the fall and expecting a summer harvest.
Ouch.
The timing's just off.
Yeah, so how do we fix that? How do we overcome procrastination, especially on the things that really matter?
I think recognizing the pattern.
Yeah.
Are we delaying our spiritual growth because we're afraid, overwhelmed, or just being lazy? Once we see the root cause, then we can start to address it.
It's like anything else, right? You want to get better, you got to put in the work. It's like the article even says, an athlete who wants to win a race, they wouldn't just show up on race day.
No. They'd be training.
Yeah, spiritual growth requires that practice.
It does.
And it doesn't have to be this big, elaborate thing.
Right.
Even just 5 minutes of prayer.
Makes a difference.
Exactly. Consistency over intensity.
Yeah. And that brings us to the next point, actually, speaking ill of others.
Oh, so easy to fall into that trap, especially now with social media. Everyone's quick to judge.
The article has this really, vivid image, speaking ill of others. It's like throwing mud in the water you're about to drink.
Wow.
You're not just polluting the environment, you're also harming yourself.
It really makes you think twice about those times when you might just gossip or put somebody down,
Our words have power, and the article suggests, instead of negativity, try a radical approach. Replace those negative comments with a silent prayer for that person.
It's choosing compassion over judgment.
Exactly. And it's not about being naive. It's more like recognizing we all have our flaws and focusing on
The good. Yeah, being intentional with our words, and they can heal or they can harm.
Absolutely. Speaking of intentionality, how we treat our families.
Oh, yeah. It's so easy to take our loved ones for granted. The morning rush, everyone's trying to get out the door.
It's like we're ships passing in the night.
Yeah.
And the article says treating your family with impatience is like adding bitter seasoning to a good meal.
Yeah.
It might still be edible, but it's not going to be enjoyable.
So how do we change that? Because I'm all for patience, but mornings can be so hectic.
It starts with small things, a warm smile, a kind word, a moment of genuine connection, just being present, even if it's just for a couple minutes before everyone goes their separate ways.
Yeah, it's like a little bit of peace in the chaos, you know?
Absolutely. And it's a reminder that our relationships, they are valuable.
Yes, they are.
And they deserve our time and attention.
They do. Speaking of things that deserve our attention, our physical health. Right.
The saying, your body is a temple.
Of course. Well, they take it literally. They say that neglecting your health is like letting a sacred space fall apart. I like that. It makes you think about those bad habits.
Yeah.
Staying up too late, skipping meals, not moving enough. It's like we're not respecting our bodies.
Exactly. The article says that caring for our physical well-being, it's a form of worship, honoring the gift of life.
And it's not about being perfect. It's about
right.
making healthy choices.
Exactly. And they even point out, Jesus, the busiest person ever, made time to rest. He withdrew to pray and recharge. If he needed it, how much more do we?
That's a great point. Taking care of our responsibilities, but also taking care of ourselves.
It's about finding that balance.
It is. It's a struggle, but it's worth it, right?
It is.
Our physical health, it's all connected.
It's all connected to our spiritual health.
Absolutely. So what's one small step we can take today to honor that, to honor our temple?
Maybe it's a walk, a healthy meal, or just getting some more sleep. Those little choices, they make a big difference over time.
Yeah, they do. All right, let's talk about the information overload, because the article talks about consuming too much negative news. I struggle with this. It's so easy to get caught up in that cycle.
Oh, yeah, especially with social media.
Yeah, it's constant.
It is. The article compares consuming too much negative news to planting thorns in your heart.
Okay.
It's not that we ignore the problems, but we need to be mindful of how much negativity we let in, especially first thing.
It's like starting the day with a dose of poison.
It is.
Not good for the mental, spiritual health.
No, and it's not about pretending everything is fine either. It's more like being selective with our information.
Okay.
Choosing to focus on what uplifts and inspires rather than what drags us down.
They suggest a fast from the news.
Yes.
Just limit your exposure, create some space for
Positive input.
Yeah, I've done that before. And it's amazing how much lighter you feel.
It is.
When you're not constantly being bombarded.
So instead of starting your day with the news, try something different.
Right.
Like read a book, listen to music, or just spend a few minutes in prayer,
It's about feeding our minds with something good.
Absolutely. Now let's talk about family time, or rather, the lack of it.
Uh-oh.
Big one. They compare ignoring family time into building a house without strong walls.
Okay.
It might look good on the outside, but it's not going to hold up when the storms come.
No, it's not.
It's not. Those small moments of connection, like dinner together, a bedtime story, just chatting about your day.
Yeah.
Those are the things that build strong relationships.
Absolutely.
The article, it talks about being present, putting away distractions, and giving your loved ones
Your full attention.
Yeah.
It's not just being in the same room.
It's about connecting.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be anything fancy.
No.
Even just 15 minutes can make a difference.
Exactly. They talk about just sharing a meal together.
Right.
It's an act of love and connection.
Yeah, so how can we be more present? Maybe put the phone away during dinner, play a game.
Or just ask each other about your day and really listen to the answer.
It's those small things, but they show your loved ones they matter.
They do. Speaking of intentionality, this next one's a big one. Greed.
Oh, yeah.
They compare greed to having a treasure chest full of gold, but you never spend any of it. What's the point of having all that wealth if it's not making a difference?
Right? It's like you can't take it with you.
Right.
We're not meant to just hoard everything,
No.
whether it's money, possessions, even our talents.
Exactly. True generosity that reflects God's character. We're
Mm.
blessed to be a blessing.
And it's not just about, writing a check.
Right.
It's about giving our time, energy, love.
Absolutely. And the article points out there's a joy that comes from seeing how our generosity impacts others.
Yeah,
It's not about getting something back. It's the satisfaction of knowing that you made a difference.
absolutely. So how can we practice generosity today? Maybe donate to a cause, volunteer our time, just to offer a helping hand to someone.
It's those small acts, they add up.
They really do.
And speaking of positive change, the article tackles discouragement.
Yes, we all have those mornings when we just wake up and it's like there's a cloud hanging over us.
The article says giving into that discouragement, it's like blocking the sun before it even rises.
Okay.
It's about choosing to focus on the light.
Yeah, but how do you do that when it feels so overwhelming?
It starts with awareness,
Okay.
recognizing those thoughts as they pop up, then replace those negative thoughts with positive ones.
Easier said than done.
I know, but the article suggests, start your day with prayer. Ask God to fill your mind with his peace and his hope.
Okay.
Focus on things you're grateful for.
Right. Even small things.
And it's not about ignoring the challenges, it's about facing them from a different perspective,
I like that.
knowing you've got a source of strength.
It reminds me of that verse, Philippians. Finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things.
Exactly. And remember God's promises, too.
Yeah.
They share a story from the Bible about Joshua.
Oh, leading the Israelites into the promised land.
Yes.
What a task.
I know. They were facing so many obstacles, it would have been easy to get discouraged.
Right.
But God told him, be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged, for the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go.
That is so powerful.
It is.
So what gives you hope even when things are tough?
For me, it's remembering the times I've overcome challenges.
Yeah,
And God was there with me.
that's a good one.
Speaking of guidance, let's talk about planning your day.
This is where, I'll be honest, I'm not always the best at this.
I hear you.
I tend to just, go with the flow.
Well, the article makes a good point about why planning is so important, especially for our spiritual lives.
Okay.
They compare going through your day without a plan to swimming across a river and not knowing where you're going.
Oh, that sounds like a bad idea.
You'd be fighting the current,
Yeah, you'd be wasting a lot of energy.
Exactly. And, the article argues that when we don't have a plan for a day, we let circumstances run our lives.
Right, instead of living with intention
Exactly.
and purpose.
It's not about a rigid schedule
Right.
or like a roadmap for your day.
Okay, so what about those unexpected things that always come up?
That's true, but even having a loose plan helps us handle those detours.
Okay,
When we know where we're going, we don't get sidetracked as easily.
I see.
They actually use Jesus as an example.
Oh, wow.
Arguably the busiest person ever.
Yeah,
But he always seemed to be in the right place at the right time.
it's true. He was constantly on the move.
I know, but he had a purpose. He wasn't just
Yeah.
reacting.
Yeah,
So we can learn a lot from his example.
we can.
Even though he had unexpected challenges,
Yeah.
he knew his priorities,
Mm-hmm.
and he managed his time well.
Yeah, so how can we bring more of that intentionality into our day-to-day lives?
Maybe start by making a to-do list,
Okay,
or just taking a few minutes each morning and thinking about your goals.
right. So it's going from what's happening to me to what am I creating?
Exactly.
It's a whole different way of looking at things.
It is. And speaking of perspective, the article talks about relationships.
This is always an interesting topic. We're social creatures, so relationships, they're a big part of life.
Absolutely. And this point is about knowing the difference between those surface level connections and the deeper ones that really make our lives richer.
So it's not about how many friends you have
No.
or followers on social media. It's about
The quality,
what quality.
they compare superficial relationships to a tree with shallow roots.
Okay,
It might look strong at first, but then a strong wind comes.
Yeah.
It'll topple right over.
because it doesn't have that strong foundation.
Exactly. Real connection, it takes more than just surface interactions.
Right.
It takes effort and vulnerability.
Yeah, that can be scary.
It can.
It's easier to just stay, where it's safe.
Absolutely, but the article says if you want to experience real connection,
Yeah,
you have to be willing to dive deeper.
right.
And they actually use David and Jonathan from the Bible as an example.
Okay.
Their friendship, it was full of loyalty
Yeah,
and a deep connection.
it
They
was.
weren't afraid to share their struggles with each other.
That's a good example of what real friendship looks like.
It is real connection. It's not about being perfect.
Yeah.
It's about being seen for who you are.
Yeah, flaws and all.
It takes work, being intentional, being vulnerable, making time for those who matter.
It does. It's about quality over quantity.
It is.
Investing in those relationships that really
Feed your soul.
feed your soul, yeah. So speaking of nourishment, the article talks about spiritual discipline.
Ah, the foundation of our relationship with God.
Yeah.
It's like any other relationship, it takes time and attention.
Right.
They compare neglecting spiritual disciplines to not watering a plant.
Okay, yeah. Without water, it's going to die.
Exactly, no matter how healthy it was.
Right.
And that's true for our spiritual lives, too. If we don't make time for prayer, Bible study, serving others,
Right.
our faith will suffer.
It's not just about going through the motions.
No, it's not.
Right. It's about truly connecting with God.
Yes, and the article points out even Jesus made time for spiritual practice. He often went to be alone and pray. If he needed that, think about us.
That's a good point.
It is. We all need that time for reflection, connection.
Yeah.
It's not selfish. It's essential.
Yeah. So what does your spiritual practice look like?
Well, I'll admit, I've struggled with it in the past. It's easy to get caught up, but I'm trying to be more intentional about prayer, reading,
Yeah.
just being still and listening.
Yeah. And it doesn't have to be this huge thing.
Right.
Even just a few minutes.
Exactly. Consistency is key.
Absolutely.
It's about making space for what matters.
Exactly. And speaking of things that matter, the article ends with a point about not wasting our talents.
Ah, bringing it all together.
Yeah.
Gratitude, generosity, compassion, intentionality. It all leads to using what we've been given to make a difference.
We talked about this before, but everything we have, our time, money, abilities, it's all a gift.
It is a gift.
And we're called to use it well.
Absolutely. They compare wasting our talents to burying a treasure. What a waste of potential.
It is. We're not just here to consume, we're here to contribute, right?
Exactly. And they use the parable of the talents. The master gave his servants money, told them to invest it.
Right.
Those who invested were rewarded. The one who hid it
Yeah.
was rebuked.
Yeah, we're accountable for what we've been given.
We are. So what talents do you have that you can use to make an impact today?
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be, this big flashy thing, right?
It doesn't. Small acts of kindness, generosity, they all add up.
Absolutely. Well, we've covered a lot in this first part of our deep dive. It's amazing how those little choices we make in the morning can impact our whole day,
Our lives, really.
our lives, and even the world around us.
It's a reminder that we have the power to choose how we start each day, and that can change everything.
It can, but wait, there's more. We're just getting started. We've got more habits to uncover, so stay tuned for part 2 of our deep dive into these 13 morning habits that don't please God. All right, so we've already uncovered some pretty thought-provoking stuff about how our morning habits can impact our relationship with God, but there's still so much more to explore.
There is. The article goes even deeper, like into those emotional and spiritual areas.
Yeah, and this next one, it's about those sneaky little negative thoughts. They creep in first thing in the morning, set the tone for the whole day.
Like, I'm not good enough,
Yeah, I'll never succeed, those kinds of things.
It's like you wake up and you're already putting on these gray-tinted glasses.
Ugh, I hate that feeling, like you're defeated before you even start.
Yeah.
But the article has an interesting take on it. They compare giving in to those thoughts. It's like blocking the sun before it even has a chance to rise.
And they're not just talking about, having a bad mood.
Right.
They're saying when you let those thoughts take over,
Yeah.
you're blocking God's light, his hope for you.
I see. So it's like you're choosing to focus on the shadows
Yeah.
instead of all the potential for good.
Right, but how do you fight those thoughts, especially when they feel so strong?
Yeah, it's tough.
The article says it starts with being aware.
Okay.
So recognizing them as they come up.
Catching them red-handed.
Exactly. It's not about pretending they're not there.
Right.
It's about seeing them, but not letting them control you.
Okay, so then what?
Well, then the article says you replace those thoughts with something good, something positive, something that comes from your faith.
That sounds harder.
It is, but they offer some ways to do it, like starting the day with prayer.
Okay.
Ask God to fill your mind with his peace, his hope.
Huh.
and, focusing on what you're grateful for, even little things.
It's not ignoring the hard stuff,
No, it's not.
but you're approaching it from a different place.
Right, knowing you have strength to draw on.
It's almost like a mental detox.
It is, and the article also says don't forget God's promises, and they even tell this story from the Bible
Okay.
about Joshua. He had to lead the Israelites to the promised land.
Yeah, I remember that one. Daunting task.
Right, they were facing all these obstacles, enemies everywhere.
Yeah,
Easy to get discouraged, right?
totally.
But God told him, be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged. For the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go.
Wow. Yeah,
Powerful stuff.
it is. It's like no matter how hard things get, you're not alone.
Exactly. God is with you. He'll give you what you need to face it.
So for our listener, what's one thing that helps you when things feel tough?
For me, it's remembering all the times I've gotten through challenges before.
Yeah,
God has always been there.
good reminder. And, it kind of ties into the next habit in the article, which is planning your day.
Uh-huh.
No, I'll be honest, this isn't my strong suit.
I hear you.
I'm more of a go-with-the-flow type.
Yeah, but the article makes a good case for why planning is important from a spiritual perspective.
Okay, I'm listening.
They say, going through your day without a plan, it's like trying to swim across a river without knowing where you're headed.
Okay, yeah, you're going to get swept away.
Exactly. You'll waste a lot of energy, and you might not even reach the other side.
Right, so it's about being intentional,
Yes.
having a purpose.
They say, when you don't have a plan,
Yeah,
you're letting circumstances run your life.
instead of taking control.
Exactly.
So, it's not about having a rigid schedule, is it?
No, not at all.
Okay.
It's about having some kind of a roadmap,
Okay, that makes sense.
knowing what you want to achieve.
But what about all those unexpected things that happen?
True, but even a loose plan can help you with that.
Okay,
When you know where you're going, it's easier to stay on track.
makes sense.
And they use Jesus as an example here.
Wow, okay.
I mean, he was busy, constantly on the go,
Yeah,
but he always seemed to be where he needed to be.
right, at the right time.
Teaching, healing, helping people.
He had a purpose.
He did. He wasn't just reacting.
Yeah.
So we can learn from that.
We can't.
It's about knowing your priorities, managing your time.
So how can we do that?
Maybe take a few minutes each morning to make a list.
Okay.
Think about your goals, potential problems.
Like shifting your mindset, right?
It is.
From passive to active.
Exactly. And speaking of shifting your mindset, the article talks about relationships.
Okay, I'm interested. Relationships are so important to us.
They are. We're social beings.
Yeah.
And this point, it's about seeing the difference between those shallow connections and the deep ones that really enrich our lives.
So it's not about how many friends you have, it's about...
Depth, yeah.
They compare those surface-level relationships to a tree with shallow roots, okay? Might look strong on the outside, but when a big wind comes along, it's going to fall over.
Because it doesn't have that deep foundation.
Exactly. Real connection, it takes more than just, small talk, right? It takes effort, vulnerability.
It does, and it can be scary putting yourself out there.
It can be. It's easier to just play it safe.
I know, but the article says if you want that real connection,
Yeah.
you have to dive deeper.
You do.
And they use David and Jonathan from the Bible as an example.
Okay.
Their friendship, it was deep. They were loyal. They weren't afraid to be honest with each other.
Right. That's what true friendship should be.
It is real connection. It's not about being perfect.
Oh.
It's about being real.
Flaws and all.
Yes. And it takes work, reaching out, making time, being honest.
It does. It's about quality, not quantity.
Absolutely. Investing in the relationships that really matter.
Yeah, that feeds your soul.
Speaking of nourishment, the article then goes into spiritual discipline.
This is where the rubber meets the road, right? Our relationship with God.
It is. It's like any other relationship. It takes time. It takes work.
We have to nurture it.
They compare neglecting our spiritual disciplines to not watering a plant.
Okay, yeah, without water, a plant will wilt.
It will, no matter how healthy it was before.
And it's the same with our faith, right?
It is. If we don't make time for prayer, for studying, or for helping others,
Yeah.
our faith will suffer.
So it's not just about, going to church on Sunday.
No, it's about that daily connection with God.
It's about making it a priority.
And they point out even Jesus, he made time for spiritual practice.
Yeah.
He would go off to pray, to be alone with God.
If he needed that, then we definitely need it.
We do. We all need that time for reflection.
It's not selfish.
It's not. It's essential.
Yeah, so what does your spiritual practice look like?
I've struggled with it in the past.
Yeah, it's easy to get busy.
It is, but I'm trying to be more intentional about it.
Okay.
Making time for prayer, for reading.
And it doesn't have to be this big production.
No, even a few minutes can make a difference.
It's about consistency, right?
Yes.
Making it a habit.
Creating space for what truly matters.
Yeah, and speaking of what matters, the article ends on a powerful note about not wasting our talents.
Ah, yes, it all comes full circle.
It does. We've talked about gratitude, generosity, compassion.
And intentionality.
Yeah, and it all leads to this, using what we have to make a difference.
Exactly. Everything we've been given.
Yeah, our time, our money, our skills.
They're gifts from God.
And we're called to use them wisely.
They compare it to, like, burying a treasure and never using it.
What a waste, right?
It is. We're not here to just take, take, take.
We're here to give back.
Exactly. They use the parable of the talents.
Okay.
The master gives his servants money, tells them to invest it.
Right.
Those who did were rewarded. The one who hid it, he was in trouble.
He was. So it's a reminder that we're responsible for how we use what we've been given.
We are. So what talents do you have that you can use to make a difference?
Maybe it's volunteering, using your skills to help someone, donating to a cause.
It doesn't have to be something big and flashy.
Small acts of kindness, they add up.
They do. They really do.
Well, we've covered a lot in this second part of our deep dive. It's amazing how much those small choices, those morning habits, they can impact our lives.
Our whole outlook.
Yeah, and even ripple out into the world around us.
They do. It's a reminder that we have the power to choose how we start each day.
And those choices, they matter.
They really do.
We've talked about a lot of these morning habits, and it's amazing how they all connect to deeper spiritual stuff. But there's one last habit from the article I think ties it all together.
Ooh, I'm intrigued. What is it?
It's about that choice, to connect with God first thing, before the day gets crazy.
Okay, yeah, like setting your spiritual compass before you head out.
Exactly. The article compares neglecting this time to trying to run a marathon without training.
You'd be in trouble. We know physical stuff needs preparation, but sometimes we forget our spiritual lives need that too.
Right, we fuel our bodies, but what about our souls? And the article is clear this isn't about checking a box on some religious list.
It's about really connecting with God.
Yeah, a deeper level.
Seeking his guidance, listening to what he's saying.
And aligning yourself with his will.
Absolutely.
And it doesn't have to be this big, long thing.
No.
Sometimes it's just a few minutes of quiet.
Just being still.
Reading a bit of scripture.
Yeah.
Or just being present, aware of God's presence.
The article talks about how Jesus, even with the busiest schedule ever, made time to pray.
Right. He went to be alone, to connect with God.
If he needed that time, think about us.
Yeah, it's so easy to say, I'm too busy.
It is.
But we underestimate how powerful those few minutes can be.
We do. It's about priorities, right?
It is.
Our relationship with God, that's the foundation.
It is. It's the most important thing. So someone's listening and thinking, okay, this sounds great, but where do I even start? What advice would you give?
Start small. Maybe set your alarm a few minutes early. Spend that time in prayer.
Okay.
Or keep a devotional by your bed. Read a little before you even get up.
Those are good ideas. It's about finding what works for you,
Yeah, and be patient with yourself. It takes time.
Yeah.
New habits don't form overnight.
There will be days you miss it.
Oh, absolutely. Or you'll feel distracted, but just keep coming back.
Yeah.
God's always waiting.
It's about the effort, not being perfect.
And remembering God's grace.
Always there, even when we mess up.
The article also talks about something that can hinder our spiritual growth.
Okay.
Starting the day with all that negative news.
We talked about this a bit before, but it's so easy to get sucked in.
It is. With social media, the news, it's constant.
Yeah, it's like a fire hose of negativity.
It's like starting your day with poison.
Yeah, it fills your mind with all that fear and anxiety.
It makes it hard to connect with God, to feel his peace.
The article says it's like planting thorns in your heart.
Yeah, troping out the good stuff.
So instead of the news, what if you filled your mind with something good?
Right, like what?
Maybe read some scripture, listen to an inspiring podcast.
Or spend some time in nature.
Those are great ideas. It's about what we choose to feed our minds, especially first thing.
Focus on what's good, what's true, even when the world feels dark.
Well, we've talked about a lot. These 13 morning habits, they seem simple, but they're connected to something bigger.
They are. It's about our spiritual lives.
And it's amazing how much those little choices can affect our whole day.
Our whole lives.
Yeah, they have a ripple effect.
So what are you taking away from all this? What's sticking with you?
For me, it's intentionality. It's realizing those small moments in the morning, they can be really meaningful.
Yeah.
If we approach them with the right attitude.
I love that. It's not just a checklist. It's a way to connect with God.
Exactly. And to set yourself up for a good day. So one habit to focus on for the next week, what would you pick?
That's a tough one, but I think creating that quiet time in the morning before everything gets going, it's like setting a solid foundation.
Yeah, it's a great choice. Small changes, but they can make a big difference.
They can. So to everyone listening, take what you've learned, try these habits, see what works for you. Be patient. It takes time to build a routine.
It does. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll be back next week with a new topic. Until then, may your mornings be filled with peace and purpose and a real connection with God.